Welcome to Commander Central, episode 268, and today we're going to be talking about tips for you to give to new players when they start playing Commander. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm everybody's lovable, awesome person named Chris. What's up, boys?
Well, you're in a good mood today.
That's an intro. Jeez.
I actually got like a full 8 or 9 hours of sleep. I actually feel really good today, so.
I hate you.
First Magic pre-release in a long time we get to have today.
Yeah, I got to get all psyched up for it because it's going to suck horribly the rest of the weekend, so.
Well, because you were just telling us that it's simultaneous with a Pokemon pre-release, right?
Yes, with the Chilling Reign pre-release for Pokemon because Wizards moved the date of Modern Horizons, which just so happens to fall onto Pokemon pre-release too, so it's wonderful.
That's going to be a lot of stuff to deal with.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think Wizards kicks themselves for getting rid of the Pokemon card game and sending it back to the Pokemon Company / Nintendo?
I have no clue. All I know is that the Pokemon players love it because they don't get the trash foils like we do.
Right.
So, Max, are you going to try to play this weekend, or do you have too much stuff going on?
Probably have too much stuff going on. My brother and his family are coming up for the first time since, COVID happened a year and a half ago. So family time most of the weekend. I might try to stop in the shop after work and try to pick up a pre-release kit for an at-home pre-release, but we gotta see how the rest of my workday goes. And plus I have a Ratchet & Clank for the PS5 to play all night, so that's where my priorities are probably gonna go.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get in for one, but I don't know which time as well. Same thing for me. I got a lot going on. But I'm hoping I can squeeze one in because I'm really excited about these cards and the format. And I'd like to be able to play at least in a pre-release environment for it just to try it out. So I'm going to make an attempt. We will see if I pull that off. I will let you guys know next week for the next show if that happened or not. Prices are nuts on these singles, though.
Yeah, the price point on them is elevated, and I don't know why, seeing how there's so many options of buying, because you got the collector boosters, you have set boosters, you have draft, and bundles, plus the pre-release, so I think they're going to drop substantially after everyone starts cracking stuff.
Yeah, they're going to have to, I would hope so. But yeah, there's just so many good things here, and you're looking at, I guess, a heavy amount of double demand. You have modern demand and commander demand, much heavier than you usually get those two things. It's kind of the set equivalent of you having the pre-release for Pokemon and Magic. We have heavy demand for two formats, if not even Eternal formats as well for some of these cards. So yeah, a lot going on here. I definitely hope these singles drop in price a little bit for sure.
Well, I definitely think they will, due to this, even the fact that, there's 3 different arts of a card type of
exactly.
deal. So an original art of it, that's your basic Magic border, all that stuff. That'll probably be the cheapest version, whereas if you want the fancies, then I'm sorry, they're probably going to be astronomically high.
And then hopefully, Forgotten Realms hype is going to start up here in probably 2 weeks or so maybe that will alleviate some of this as well.
I'm looking forward to that one a lot.
Yeah, same here. So, okay, if you out there in listener land want to reach out to us and talk about any cool things you had at your pre-release or any singles you picked up, how would you go about doing that, Chris?
You can find us on a multitude of social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can find us on Facebook by searching CMDR Central. You can find us online at cmdrcentral.com, and you can also find us on YouTube by searching CMDR Central.
You can also head over to patreon.com/CMDRCentral. Check out our reward tiers such as the Decks You Play shows, guesting, or just joining our community to play virtual EDH. This week we want to say hello and thank you to one new patron, Bradley Cook.
Thank you very much, Bradley. We appreciate it, and we appreciate the support from all the listeners, whether you're supporting us on Patreon or you're just supporting us by listening to the show. It means a lot, and we want to thank each and every one of you. And I think we have a contest wrapping up here for the Phyrexian Swamp that we're going to give away from the Jumpstart set.
Yeah, so we were giving that away on Twitter. The winner of that is Tanner Spalding, at Spalding Tanner. So we will reach out to you to get some shipping information. We'll get that out in the mail as soon as we can. We also have the winner of the Clash Pack we were giving away to our Patreon supporters. And that winner is Tyler Hersber. So I will send you a message on Patreon and we'll get that out in the mail as well.
Very cool. All right, so should we jump into this main show topic here, gentlemen?
Sure thing. I have a lot of stuff I can talk about because this topic comes to me hard and fast every single day I'm at work.
So, one of the things we often do is we're giving advice to you for your decks, but if you're listening to this show, odds are pretty high you are someone who has at least played Commander a little bit. You're not a new player. So we're talking about things for the most part that are useful with people who already know the format. But not everyone that you interact with, particularly if you're like trying to get your significant other or someone in your family or a friend into Commander, or you're just in a shop with somebody new who's like, hey, what are you guys doing? What's the format you're playing? We're going to talk about like some things you can do to help the person who's new to Commander play the format and play it in a way that's successful and makes them want to come back and play more frequently. So the first thing I am going to throw out there that would behoove you to suggest to them is to start with a monocolor deck or a two-color deck. Yes, monocolor decks are kind of restrictive because of how the color pie works. There's always things you can't do. However, it eliminates one of the most frustrating things in Commander, which is not having mana to do what you want to do. In a monocolor deck, you can very easily build a monocolor deck with just like 37 basic lands, and you're going to be just fine. You're going to miss out on some cool utility pieces for sure, but like that deck's going to function great. Even in a two-color deck, like I have built budget two-color decks that are essentially running, 17 or 18 of each basic land, and that's good enough too. Yes, once in a while something will go wrong, but for the most part, you are still going to get the colors you need in a two-color deck. It's just going to eliminate one of the frustrations that can happen with 3 or 4 or 5 color decks where you tend to need a much more complicated land base to consistently have access to what you need. Matter of fact, I would argue that if you're playing in a two-color deck, things like Terramorphic Expanse or Evolving Wilds, the kind of slow fetches that will get you a land but come into play tapped, you're still probably better off just running basics. Like, given a choice for me between running a basic and running one of those slow fetches on a two-color deck, I'll just run a basic unless I need the landfall triggers, for example, or the commander cares about a shuffling effect or whatever. So that's something I would recommend there as well, because, hey, it minimizes shuffling and searching for new players, and that's useful. So that's the first thing for me, is I would say if there's somebody that you're trying to get into Commander and you're helping them build that first deck, I would focus on something that's just one or just two colors, just to make their life easier. Max, what's your first tip you have here for us?
Mine is similar to yours. Start with the precons.
Yeah?
Mainly because there are so many of them now. It's not like when we all kind of started playing Commander where we just got the set of 5 once a year in November, and that was it. I mean, we get them now once a year with typically a standard set. We get the official Commander precons, but now almost every standard set comes with 2 or 4 additional Commander precon decks, which by the looks of it are getting more and more new cards in it every time a new set comes out. When these first started with Zendikar Rising, I think they just had 3 new cards and they were pretty much the commanders. Kind of same with the Kaldheim ones. I think they got a few more new cards, but now when we get to the Adventure of the Realms set, there's going to be 4 decks and each have like 8 to 10 new cards in them. Like, that's insane to me, where we used to wait for that type of product for once a year and there'd be 50 new cards across 5 decks. Now we're getting those every 3 months. So these are great because helping someone learn, it takes out the fear of brewing my own deck and what are people going to think. You can just grab it off the shelf. You can learn synergies of the color pie, and you get a bunch of new cards and it's ready to go. You buy the deck, you buy a pack of sleeves, you're ready to go play at your LGS or your buddy's house or with your partner, and you're good to go, versus trying to figure out what singles do I need to buy, and is this a good card, is this a good commander? It's all in the box, ready to go, and it's a great intro product. And like I said, we just have a ton of them now, and that's what I really appreciate.
They're also pretty good now. We played on stream the other night at EDH Rec, and the guest we had on, Nelson from Loading Ready Run, was playing a Calamax precon. I think it was out of the box. It was sleeved up, but I don't think he had tweaked it at all. I think it was like 100 cards from the deck. He ran away with the game. The only reason he didn't win was at the last minute, Matt Morgan went to swing at him with like a 9 damage creature or something with a Whispersilk Cloak. And as he went to equip the Whispersilk Cloak, I hit it with a Tainted Strike.
Oh, no.
So it would go to 10 and be lethal infect. And then even then, Nelson was able to respond and he attempted a counter and Matt had to counter it, and then he removed the Whispersilk Cloak, and again, I, as the third party, had a Shizo Death Storehouse, and I was able to then give it Fear so it could still poke through. But it took the 3 of us. Joey had got bumped out at that point, but it took the 3 of us, and then finally the 2 of us working together with decks that weren't precons to stop that Calamax precon. Like those decks are that good at this point.
That's gross.
Yeah. Chris, what's your first pointer here?
The very first thing that I would say, and this is something that I preach quite a bit whenever we talk on topics like this, is about having fun and stuff like that. So you need to make them feel welcome, no matter what they're playing. I don't care if they're playing, turn 3, smash your face in combo, still make them feel welcome to play. When they sit down and play, and after it happens, then you explain to them, this isn't how we play or whatnot, that kind of thing. So they get a better understanding of what everything is. I say this in the fact that, we are in a close-knit community, and we need to show them that this is a great community. You don't need to show them that this is, other trading card game communities that are very toxic and mean and, judgmental and everything. We want to show them that this is an awesome time. Everyone loves playing this game, everything like that. The next thing to do is encourage, compliment, and cheer them on, especially as a new player. That really goes a long way to building their confidence overall in the game and their confidence in playing and how much they actually enjoy and like to play the game. The last thing, and this is sad to say, but it needs to be said because I run into this a lot, is you need to create boundaries with these new players, because there are the type of people out there who are, I like to deem them as like a puppy dog, where they're going to follow you around. They're going to sit and talk to you, all the time, so you need to try to create those boundaries, but do it in a nice way. Don't just, randomly say when they're talking, just be like, dude, really, this is enough of this. I can't do this anymore. That kind of thing, just let them know ahead of time, I can't always be the one who helps you.
Sure. That's a good one. It never occurred to me, but like, you're somebody at the shop, so you're there all the time behind a counter.
Yes.
And you're someone who's on a podcast. So like you're kind of a double target for people to hit up and want to be the person that they're asking for questions or advice or wanting to sit down and play a game with.
Yeah. A lot of times what I do too, people are like, so what do you think about this stuff? Like this deck. I'm like, I know nothing about Magic. I'm like, I only know Pokemon stuff. And like Phil will turn and look at me and he's like, dude, you have a podcast. I'm like, Phil, shut up. Shh, and enough.
Like, oh, I'm drunk right now. I can't give you that advice. I've been day drinking all afternoon.
The last thing to go with creating the boundaries is if you show them the online tools that are out there and help them that route, that is the best way to push them off on their own. Let them become, kind of like letting a kid go. After your kid's so old, you can push them off into the world and they know what they need and they have all the tools to do it.
That's actually a real good one. What's the saying? Teach a man to fish versus just giving him a fish. Yeah, that makes a difference. I mean,
that's not how that works. You don't teach a man to fish. Once you teach him to fish, then he spends thousands and thousands of dollars on fishing stuff. And
then he sinks his boat in the lake and then turns into a whole thing.
Right?
Listened years ago, we were talking about our friend who sank his boat.
Is fish Magic the cards in this analogy? Because I feel like that's
sure, maybe. Yeah. No, those are all really good points, because if you haven't gotten online and looked and you're not aware, EDH Rec to kind of sing their praises as I actually work for them, but like it's a great site like that.
Yes,
you can find so many things in there. Scryfall, who I don't work for, but I will sing their praises too. Like if you are I'm trying to find a card that does a thing, Scryfall's, the ability to search that up on Scryfall is amazing. There's a lot of great resources, but people, if they don't know they're there or they haven't looked recently, they might just not be aware of that stuff out there. So that can be really useful as well.
Yes.
The next thing I will advise to tell new players, and they're building that first deck of theirs maybe, is to have a clear and easily understood win condition. So I've mentioned here recently, I re-put together a starter elf deck to have with me for people just like this, for new players that want to play a game, and it's a budget deck, so I can just tell them, hey, go ahead and keep it afterwards. Well, it's an elf deck, so like there's 30 different elves in it, and it's going to ramp, and it's going to put bodies into play. It's a very simple win condition. There's an overrun in that deck. There's an overwhelming stampede. There's an overcome, which is basically a bad overrun. It's +2/+2 in trample. And there's a scale up. So like I have 4 cards in addition to just going wide that can make that final shot of punching through damage even easier. That's very easy to understand if you're a new player. Okay, I've got 7 elves in play. I just top decked a card that gives all my elves +3/+3 in trample. I understand how to use that and what that's going to do and how it's going to win the game. And then next time when they're playing, they understand again, oh, I know how this deck is going to get my victory. It's all very clear and easily understood versus like something in my Pestilence deck or something where like, okay, if I have a piece in play that reduces black damage to me and something in play that keeps my creatures from taking black damage and I get a Pestilence out and I can activate that to clear the board and do damage, like that's not going to be something a new player wants to mess around with versus just turning creatures sideways and smashing face. It's easy to understand and it's easy to replicate every time they play that deck. It's also pretty easy to upgrade. Like the cards I put in there because they were budget, but if the person has that deck, Max mentioned how easy it is to upgrade the precons. This deck is a similar thing. If someone has that deck and they want to keep playing it, it's very easy to put in a Beastmaster Ascension if they want to spend $5 or a Triumph of the Horde or something. Or if they want to take that next step and buy a Craterhoof Behemoth or a Pathbreaker Ibex, that stuff all does a very similar thing to what the deck is already doing. There's very clear, easy to find paths to add more win conditions in that deck. Even things like Throne of the God Pharaoh or Strixhaven Stadium would work nicely. It's not creature damage, but it's like damage based on you attacking with those swarms of creatures. That's also going to be very useful for that new player to have just an easily understood win condition in that deck. So that's my number 2 here is just make that clear and simple to get to and find and understand.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. More along the point of that, as a experienced player, you've been playing for a long time, I would suggest keeping around a low power deck such as what Dana was talking about, but for yourself. So when you play with these people, you don't have, your top tier, all foiled deck, all that fancy stuff, you have something that's more down to earth with them. So they get to see how the game plays. They get to see interactions. The game just becomes better overall for them, just a better experience. So I personally have 2 of them now, I think, because I've been playing with a lot of new players, so I can jump between the 2 of them. And it's a blast to do it that route.
Yeah, the Boros deck I've built recently, it's a Boros Tokens deck with Adriana Captain of the Guard, and it's the same thing. Like, I can win games with it, it's perfectly fine, but it's also the kind of thing a new player can very easily, that I'm playing against, can very easily get what I'm doing, and it's not going to be so many moving parts, and it's not going to be so complicated, and it's not going to win out of nowhere either. Like, it's very clearly, hey, all of a sudden, okay, there's a bunch of tokens in play, what's going to happen with them? You can see that coming too, and it doesn't generate feel bads as well. So, yeah. Max, what's your number 2 here?
I'm going to piggyback off of Chris's first one here about, building the relationships and how to interact with the new players. And I'm going to say, don't automatically critique a new player's deck, especially if it's like their first home-built deck versus a precon. We've had this type of situation in the past in our various LGSs. It's really easy if you say, to sit down and be like, well, you should really be running this card over this card. Well, maybe that player doesn't know that the card you're recommending exists, or maybe they don't want to shell out $10, $20, $50 for that card. Just because you run a card doesn't mean everybody should run a card. And yeah, we talk about staples and cards we tend to run when we do like our Decks You Play shows, but maybe someone doesn't want to run Beast with an Ingenerous Gift. Maybe they're happy with the cards they're running. Another thing is maybe when you critique a card is that they're running because it's not great, but maybe there's some hidden interaction in the deck that you haven't seen yet, or maybe you don't even know about, and they were like, well, this is why I'm doing it. Or maybe it's just because it's on theme. I think of, like, the Cauldron cards, or the Scepter, Throne, and Crown from, like, Core Set 11, that when you have all 3 artifacts, they do something. People run those cards because they're fun, and they might be thematic in their royalty deck or whatever, so just don't jump to conclusions when people are running cards you find less efficient or just not good, because maybe they like the card and it's their deck and they built it that way. So, be nice when you recommend things.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. We actually had that in the store the other day. We have 2 Pokemon players who are actually jumping into Magic, and they're building EDH because that's what we mainly play after hours and stuff like that. And he wanted to get a couple cards called Murder. Now, those of you who have been playing for a long time know Murder. It's been around since, like, the dawn of man type of deal. 3 mana, destroy a creature. And as I was pulling the list with my fellow coworker, Ben, I was like, oh, Murder, this is awesome. Like, I haven't seen someone play this in forever. And Ben's like, well, there are better cards. I'm like, no. I'm like, this is how new players start. And this is what I like, is that they're putting forth the effort to build the deck and find replacement cards. So let's let them start at the low end, just like we all did. Now it's Murder. Now it's going to get upgraded into Hero's Downfall. Then it's going to get upgraded into Vraska's Contempt and upgraded into whatever else is next. The black removal one that's free. So that's how the upgrade progression goes. So as Max was saying, don't critique what they're playing because, that's just how new players do it.
I mean, I would say generally that's true, even with not new players. Like, just don't tell someone their deck is garbage. That's not a good thing to do in general, I would say. You want to avoid that kind of interaction. But like, even, when we do the deck reviews, deck techs on our show, when someone has submitted a deck and said, hey, tell me what changes I could make, we still like go out of our way to make sure we're polite and not overly critical and try to figure out why the card is there. You definitely don't want to do anything but that when someone didn't ask you for their opinion. Like,
exactly.
Be that much more cautious when it's unsolicited. I'm not saying you can't do it, because I myself have for sure done it and had it done to me and appreciated it when someone's been like, hey, I saw you were in this card. Is there a reason for it? Because I think this one might be slightly better. Like, someone said that to me and I've been like, oh, that's actually a good point. Maybe I'll think about that. Like, you can absolutely do it. Just make sure you are comporting yourself in a polite way when you are offering that advice, because it's a really easy thing to overstep.
Yeah. And if they do ask, not everyone's a Rockefeller. So don't suggest, high dollar cards. Show them, the difference in cards, like the difference between Murder being 10 cents and Here's Dawnfall being, a couple bucks. That could be a big difference for someone.
I mean, I remember when I started the one of the first Commander decks I built, I put my Edric deck together and I was able to be like, oh, I probably want a bunch of creatures that can't get blocked. And I'm like, doing a search on I think it was Gather at the time, because Scryfall wasn't up. And I got a list of things with the keyword unblockable. I guess it's not a keyword now, but it was. I think it kind of was then. And I put a list of them together, and I'm like, Invisible Stalker, that's like $180. That's whoa, like that's too rich for my blood. I'm not buying that. Like that was like 6 years ago. Like that's a place people are oftentimes in with this kind of thing, particularly when they start. Like what you take for granted as being a cheap card, a new player in particular may not. A lot of players may not, but like try to, maintain that perspective for sure. Because it's an easy thing as a player who's been around a long time to forget when we've seen the cards that we bought for cheap go up in price, and then you kind of take it for granted or whatever. Yeah, be cautious about that. It's an easy thing to screw up. I've definitely done it myself.
Yeah, I mean, more along those lines too. As a seasoned Commander player, you're probably sitting on 100 copies of a card or something that they could need. Give it away. That's the best thing. That shows as a community, how great it is. I've done it to people. I've had people do it to me, like, hey, I got that. I got a foil copy of that card. You want it? Sure. And they just give it over. And it's like, well, what do you want for it? Nothing. Just put it in your deck because I want to see the foil version or something like that. So that's help out the new players that way. It's the best way to do things. Yeah.
Pay it forward does a lot of good in the community for sure. I agree. All right, Chris, what's your next one here?
A big one that I've been seeing kind of recently too, because of the amount of people that have been coming out, is you need to make room for them to play. Especially, as a seasoned player, if you're sitting with your buddies that you always sit with and play, and you see some new guy standing there, like looking at all the games or something, make time to pull up, get off to the side and be like, hey, you looking for a game? Pull them in. If it's a group of like 2 or 3 of them, make the time to jump in, introduce yourself, sit down and play with them, get to know them, all that fun stuff. I mean, that's just, I love doing that with people. I love watching people do it. And that's how you build the relationships and you make things just better overall.
I mean, it for sure can be intimidating to walk into an LGS when you don't know anybody in the best of circumstances, let alone when you're trying to find a group of 3 strangers to sit down with and play Commander.
Yeah, I mean, it could be very awkward. You come up and like, you guys care if I play with you or whatnot, And if someone came up and was like, yeah, you guys got room for one more, I'd be like, jump right on in. What are we playing? Let's do this. I mean, come out, be joyous, have fun. Show them everything that they need to know, and the game's going to fire off no matter what.
Yeah, because if you're the person, if you are the one who invites them to sit, you've then removed that one barrier where like they have to get the nerve to ask 3 strangers to sit down. Like that makes their life much easier if you are the person that makes that first step. Because if you're there with your 3 friends, then there's much less pressure on you to ask the one stranger than it is for the one stranger to ask 3 strangers.
Yes, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, and again, that's an easy thing to take for granted too, especially like right now when we haven't played in a year or whatever in a shop, and everyone's going back, and I'm like, oh hey, I'm seeing my friends that I haven't saw in person for a long time, and I want to play games with them. It's very easy to like get locked into doing just that versus playing with somebody you don't know. Because like, well, I haven't played with our friend Justin was at the shop last week for the first time in a while, and I wanted to play a few games with Justin because I hadn't seen him in a year, and he's a good guy. I wanted to talk about his new job and what happened in his life. I wanted to do that, but like I also had to remind myself that, there was other people that wanted to play games that maybe don't know anybody, let alone the two of us. So yeah, finding that room for that person is a real good idea, Chris. My next one here is probably more, again, about like that person building their first deck. And if you're collaborating with a new player who's like, hey, I want to build a commander deck, one thing I would say is maybe if you can politely steer them away from a commander that's going to draw too much focus or too much aggro.
Narset Enlightened Master.
Yeah, well, yeah. or the one I think about is Chulane. Like, if you were a new player and you're looking through new commanders that came out and you're like, oh, hey, Chulane, wait, I play land and I draw cards and play creatures and in game, do everything on one thing.
Though.
It absolutely is. Like, and I totally get that. But it's super powerful. It's everything you want on one body. I could go steal a mannequin off the display at Walmart and put it in a pot of the Chulane deck, and it would probably win still a quarter of the games. Like, it's a commander that's just super, super powerful. The problem is...
Do they even have mannequins at Walmart? I don't know if they do.
But if they do, they'd win games with Chulane decks for sure. But like if you were a new player and you're sitting down with people that are at all, not even like being sharks, like just trying to play Magic, and you drop a Chulane, they're going to remove it, because if you don't, bad things will happen. And if you're a new player, that's going to suck, sitting down and being like, okay, turn 5, I got my 5 mana out, I'm going to cast my commander, pass a turn, before the end of your turn, I'm going to murder Chulane. Like, oh, okay, well, next turn, drop a land, do something, turn 7, I'm going to cast Chulane again, okay, before the end of your turn, Pontify. Like, there's a good chance that's how that game's going to go if you're playing with a commander that draws that much focus, and that's going to be super frustrating. So I'm saying, like, try to find that balance, try to, steer them into commanders that are obviously good. You don't want to have somebody trying to play one of those bad 8-drop vanilla legends from back in the legend set, but maybe don't suggest they run one that's going to make everyone on the board remove it as soon as it comes down to. Like, there's a kind of a sweet spot in the middle there. I think that's where you want to look. Avoid the things that are going to immediately draw attention and let them run commanders that they're going to be able to put out, and people are going to be like, okay, I can't really justify blowing my removal spell on that because this other person might do something else. So if you can help suggest they find those kind of sweet spot commanders, that would be something I would suggest for sure.
Yeah, I mean, more along those lines, because I actually have something similar to this on my notes, is explain to them why,
Yes.
you're steering them away from it, or why they shouldn't play something like that, and be nice about it. You don't need to be, a big old nasty person about it or anything. Explain to them, well, this card comes down, it's going to do a million different things. For all that you're doing is you're actually playing a land type of deal, or you're you're playing a creature, which every deck plays. And we're going along the Chulane route and everything. And this is going to be a problem for everyone at the table because you're getting so much advantage compared to the rest of them. So, like you suggest, explain to them, well, Chulane's a good card, but I was just putting that in your deck and playing someone else as your commander then. So then you're not so focused on that strategy type of thing. It's the best way to go. I have it underneath, like, explaining threats to them when you're actually playing a game, well, why'd you remove that card? Well, this is why I removed it. Or more along the lines of, let them see what happens if you don't, and then explain to them afterwards why it should have been taken care of.
Right. Yep. Max, what's your next one here?
So my next one is, expect the games to go longer than normal. So EDH is already kind of a long game. Yeah, you might have your short ones that wrap up in, 45 minutes, but typically they're over an hour. When you're playing with new players, expect them to go longer. They're going to have questions. They're going to ask about what cards do. They're going to ask about what your cards are doing. They're going to ask about what are the threats on the table, or does this interaction work the way I think it does in my head? Take the time and explain to the player, answer all their questions. Put your pride aside, put your competitiveness aside, take the loss, and help those players understand how the cards they're playing with, whether it's a pre-con, something they built from scratch, or you lent them one of your decks. Explain to them how everything works when they have questions, because that, again, kind of like what we've all kind of been saying, is it's going to bring them back next week or the next time you all play. Sharing the knowledge is great. It makes people feel welcome. They don't feel like you're hiding something. I would hate to sit down as a new player and, hey, does this card work the way I think it does? Well, yeah, sort of. And that's where the answer ends. No, explain to them. Explain how everything works. So they can just next time your game might get a little shorter. Or next time they can bring their own deck now that they understand how this certain mechanic works. So just be prepared to put a little more time into the game so everybody, especially the new players, have fun and want to come back next time.
Yeah, I agree with that too. The next thing I was going to discuss too goes along those lines with you, Max, and this is a double-edged sword. It's something I don't like doing, but as a new player, I let it go, and that is take-backs. As Max was saying, to make the game better, and they don't understand how the cards go, allow them to take back that play, allow them to, to redo it type of deal. But as I said, this is a double-edged sword because in the future, they're going to think that that's what they can do. So you got to kind of explain it, well, since we're learning and this is how we're doing, you can take that back, but, in 2 weeks or something like that, I'm going to make all your spells have to resolve as you cast them. So if you messed up, then you learn the mistake, hopefully from that route, and kind of build the rapport that way, build on how they learn the game type of deal.
That's a real good one. I mean, similarly, like talking about no takebacks too, just because you yourself have a card in hand doesn't necessarily mean you have to cast it against a new player either.
Yes.
Like I've been in those situations in games where I'm playing, I know it's a new player and I'm like looking at what's in my hand. I'm like, I don't necessarily need to cast. I mean, you could cast it and win and it's maybe the optimal play, but you're like, this isn't probably going to be a good experience for them. So I'm just not going to do it. Like that's something that's an option on you as well. You can choose to just not cast that card.
Yes, I agree with that too. I've seen that lots of times out of people.
Yeah.
Kind of sandbag the game a little bit. I mean, I hate doing that too, but it makes it more fun for them, and granted, you don't even need to tell them, keep it secret that you sandbagged it, so then the game becomes more enjoyable for them and it became fun and they're excited, like the greatest part about coming into a new environment like that is the excitement that you got and it makes you want more, it's kind of like a drug, that little bit of epinephrine or whatever that's in your brain, that was all like, oh, this was awesome, I want to do this again, so you keep coming back for more and keep coming back for more, and that's the reason they call this game Cardboard Crack. Is because you just you keep wanting more and more and more of it.
Well, it's also kind of an investment in the future, right? Like, okay, you don't cast that one card that could, in the God hand you happen to draw that could win you the game on turn 5, and you're like, I'm not going to do this against a new player. So you're sacrificing that win that time, and that person remains interested and excited and comes back and plays for the next 2 years. Like, how much did you earn by not playing that card that one time and keeping that person invested? How many future good games did that generate? A ton sometimes.
Yeah, that's why I like Ben. Whenever I play with him, he's a big person who likes to instead of we'll use Chaos Warp for instance. He never uses it on someone else's stuff. He uses it on his own, which creates that wild, wacky stuff instead of, removing someone else's stuff. I'm going to remove mine and, let's see what happens type of deal. And I always find that kind of stuff exciting, and I hope that new players would find that too.
Mm-hmm. All right, Chris, what's your next one here?
I might have gone through everything randomly.
You went through your whole list.
I was going to say, I'm done as well.
I have one other thing.
Okay.
And this is more of a helping them through into the future type of deal, and that's to show off the products that you use, your Dragon Shield sleeves. Why do you use those sleeves? Your deck boxes. Why do you use those deck boxes? Those types of things. So then it's in their mind. So as a new player coming in, an EDH deck is 100 cards compared to 60 card deck, where they make tons of stuff for 60 card decks, but 100 card products are not quite made equal type of deal. Sure. So you show them what you like, why you like it, that kind of stuff, which helps them. So then when they come in, they can show that stuff off to you and be like, oh yeah, I tried this new, for me, for instance, boulders, and I love this, it's small, compact, I can put everything in there and it works wonderful, or if they come up with something new that they ordered online, they can show it to you and then it's something that just helps you too.
Well, that's actually, I didn't even think of that. That's a good call. Because I remember the first couple decks I built, I don't remember what sleeves I bought, but they were
probably
ones
Ultra Pro.
I think they were. And they split.
Yep.
And this, we're talking 6 years ago. So technology has changed in terms of what sleeves they were or how the sleeves are built. But the ones I bought, I went and bought, 4 packs or something and spent. That's winds up being $25. And sleeves started splitting and attracting a bunch of dirt and whatever. Had somebody early on been yeah, if you're looking to buy sleeves, I would recommend these or that. I prefer Dragon Shields. And I think most of us, I think all of us are using Dragon Shields. But had someone been the Dragon Shield mats are really, really good. They don't split. They, don't attract dirt. They feel really nice for shuffling. Had someone told me that, it would have saved me spending $25 and, an hour or two of my time resleeving decks with actual good sleeves 6 months later.
Yes, that I agree. I mean, that's the other thing too, as a new player coming in, you talk to us experts, I don't want to say experts, that was a bad word.
Whoa.
I'm going to get blown up on Twitter for that one.
This is the last episode of Commander Central, everybody.
As experienced players, you could also suggest them to like the people who are working at your local LGS, you know, because they can suggest all the products. They know the products. They've tested them, all that stuff, you know. So bring it up to them and be like, hey, this guy's looking for sleeves. You know, what are the best sleeves that you guys sell here type of deal, you know? And then they can explain everything to them as well.
For sure. Yeah, no, good call. The last one I have here is I would say avoid complicated combos or interactions. I'm not saying avoid combos, but experienced players, when they're building decks or putting whatever combo in their deck they're running, they'll sometimes run cards that are only really useful in that combo. I'm trying to think of an example. Like I've seen people tooth and nail into Grand Architect and is it Pilipala, the Scarecrow?
Oh, yep.
It's an infinite mana combo. And there's plenty of situations where that's really, really good. But Pilipala isn't a good card on its own necessarily.
No, it is not.
And Grand Architect can be, but like only in some decks. And in some combo decks, it's not if there's a ton of blue creatures or artifact creatures that you care about or whatever. Like there's situations where that's not particularly a good card either. And if you're a new player, you don't want to be drawing cards in your deck that look kind of useless unless you have that perfect combo. You know, Blood Bond is kind of on the other end of the spectrum. Max will like me talking nice about Blood Bond, but those are two cards that are good in their own.
Yeah.
Like Exquisite Blood is a good card. Sanguine Bond is a pretty good card. If you have one half of that combo, you're going to feel perfectly fine casting those cards and having them in your hand. As a new player, that's never going to be frustrating to you versus that Pilipala combo. Unless you're playing the kind of deck that can consistently grab it, you are going to find yourself with a bad dead card pretty frequently. So that's one thing I would avoid because I've seen that advice given before to people like, hey, why don't you put this combo in your deck? And I've always thought, this is a new player and they're not going to want to draw that one really hyper-specific combo piece because their deck isn't going to work that way. It's not running 7 tutors. It's going to be a dead card accidentally a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, I've actually had this personally at a Modern tournament when KCI was running around. It's a very complex combo. I spent weeks before playing with a buddy of mine because that's what he was playing to know how the combo worked. So when I played against it, I know how to beat it, know how it works. During the PTQ that I was playing at, the guy comboed off on me and I was watching him do it. And I'm like, cool. So he made infinite mana and he's going to draw infinite cards. But he doesn't win the game. He just loses because he draws infinite cards.
Bro, yeah.
And he's like, so I do this combo, you know, all these times and I just have infinite mana. And I'm like, cool, what are you going to do with it? And he just like sat there like, and I'm like, and now you just draw infinite cards, so you lose the game. And like he called the judge over and the judge looked at the combo and everything. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, I see how that works. And so then my buddy who was with us, because he was playing the same deck, actually pulled him off to the side after that round to show him how the combo worked and what he needed to do to win. And then that guy proceeded to making top 8 after that, which was awesome to see. You know, and that's just, you know, complicated stuff is not good for new players unless someone experiences there to show them how it works.
And that probably wasn't even a new player, and he still had issues with it. Like, that stuff is, some of those things are really, really difficult to make work.
Yeah, I mean, don't ever, I don't like suggesting combos to people. I want them to run into it them on their own, you know. I've had it with other EDH players who were in the store on Saturdays, you know, where they started, one guy comboed with like Helm of the Host or something. And he's like, so I make a token and then I make another token and then Helm of the Host triggers and I make a token. And it was like almost like an infinite loop of tokens. And we had to like literally start digging on Google to figure out how many tokens it actually made. It made like 9,000 some odd tokens or something like that. And I'm like, oh my God, that's way too many.
But that's the kind of thing too, like for a new player, like making a ton of bodies is probably pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, he thought it was awesome. He's like, because he like stopped. He's like, wait, how does this work now? Because like he started the chain and he's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know if I want to do this even.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would not suggest combos to new players, you know, at all, honestly, in my opinion.
Well, Max, do you have any final thoughts here? Any last minute bits of advice before we start to wrap this bad boy up?
Not really. I think we've all covered pretty much everything that's important. Making sure the new people have fun, you know, explaining complicated interactions or how cards work, and, you know, being able to have a lower powered deck to compete with the new players who are still learning how to play the game. I think we hit all those on the head. You know, we've all been there ourselves as
Yeah.
a new player or helping new players along the way. So it's just about, you know, being welcoming, like Chris said. I think we do a real good job of that, and I think we're really good about that at our LGS and, you know, out in the wild at GPs, our Magic Fests. It's super easy to just kind of get consumed with who you're with, but just let people play with you, and that's, you know, how the game will keep going on.
Yeah, it's an investment in the future for sure. Yeah, I completely agree. It's well put. All right, boys, I think that's going to wrap up this episode of Commander Central. Hopefully, listeners out there can put some of these tips to use in recommending them to other new players or how they interact with new players, and to get that next generation of Commander players out there building cool, fun decks and playing fun games. I am Dana. You can find me on the Twitter birds at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. And you can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. Our show is edited by Rafael Garcia, and you can find him on Twitter at Ursa Bearwalker, and our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. We'll be back this Thursday, I promise, with a deck tech. Until then, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.